Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast, energized by Celsius, the official energy drink of pewterreport.com. It is a Thursday edition of the show, our last one of the week as we get ready for a fantastic weekend. And we still have the NFL draft on the mind. So on today's show, we will be grading and breaking down the drafts of every single NFC South team, including your Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We got a couple of guests coming on the show as well, which we'll get into in a moment. Garrett Ballard from the Creamsicle Chronicle podcast will be on the latter half of the show, and we have a guest to begin this one, who I will introduce in just a moment. I'm your host, Matt Matera. Joined with me is a fellow guest. He's been on the Pewter Report podcast before, so we're very happy to have him back on. He is the content director over at Dynasty Pros and a contributor to the QB list, Dustin Ludke. Dustin was just on a second ago, got taken off. Dustin, welcome to the show. I think you're back. Just cut out for a second. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you. My window just decided to refresh itself, so that's always fun.
That's quite all right. That's technology these days. You never know when it's going to break and when it's working for you, but happy to have you on. Like I was saying before, you were a guest on this show before, so glad to have you back. How's everything going?
Man, it's been going great. This is the time of year I love for football. We had combine, free agency, draft. Now we're talking about rookies and draft grades. So I'm all about this time of year for football right now. And then we'll get through a month of this, and then we have kind of a slow period before training camp and preseason. So This is the fun time for me, especially when you talk fantasy football and dynasty, but just looking at teams in general. Hope springs eternal right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And thankfully, we do get little nuggets of football, whether it's rookie minicamp, which is coming up for the Bucs next week. And, you got mini camps here and there, who's showing up, who's not, and then mandatory minicamp in June, middle of June. So it's nice that we get a little bit, we get just enough to satisfy us up until training camp. And then that's obviously, when you go full throttle. Now, you were just at the draft. We were talking about this a little bit before the show. You were at the draft in Detroit this year. You said you went 2 years in a row. Just tell us real quick what that experience was like for someone that maybe hasn't been to a live NFL draft just yet, and what they could expect if they ever want to go to one.
If you want to go to one, I said this a couple people, grab a friend or two, because being with friends is what it's all about. Enjoying that experience. I took my buddy, met up with two other buddies there. We had media passes. We were in the media room, but we got to walk around and see the experiences. Expect to wait in lines if you're going to go do the 40-yard dash or the vert or throw the football or even buy merch. The food and beer lines weren't too long. There was a line for Mom's Spaghetti, which is M&M's Spaghetti. They had a food truck there. That was 2 hours long. But just go and enjoy the festivities. It's in Green Bay, Wisconsin next year, which is super cool. Don't know where 2026 is. There was rumors that Washington wanted it, the same as Green Bay, so that's a possibility. But I also heard that Pittsburgh might have thrown in their hat in the ring. So those are two possibilities. So if you can go, I highly recommend it. Even if you don't go down to the draft stage to watch it, just go enjoy the ambiance of thing. We went down Thursday, Friday, obviously do press on Thursday, just kind of enjoy Friday. Saturday, we actually stayed at my buddy's hotel and just watched it there. We ordered a 24-inch pizza, which I didn't even know existed in this world, but it was massive and it was great. It was just us hanging around, just people enjoying football. But go interact with other fans, other fan bases. Detroit had 775,000 people.
Jeez.
And I heard of zero incidences. Zero. I didn't hear of anything. But when you're talking Bears fans and Packers fans and Lions fans and Bills fans and Dolphins fans and Bucs and you have fan bases from every NFL, and they're all getting along because they're just enjoying football, enjoying the draft. It is really fun. And there's other events they do around that time. They did something with a veteran shelter where Sam Laporta was there. Drake May were rebuilding the garden. So there's just all this fun stuff that you can do in the city. Experience whatever city it's in. Green Bay is going to be interesting because it's not really a city, but it was a blast just to enjoy being around other football people and just see the reach and the magnitude of the NFL.
Yeah, it's crazy how much of a spectacle it's become over the past couple of years. It used to only just be in New York City. So, it was fun when the Jets or the Giants were on the clock because you knew you were going to get, the biggest, crowd. And I guess fans can travel all over the place, but the fact that it's going to city every single year, I think it makes it more special for just the typical NFL fan. And I kind of feel like they do. You mentioned Washington and Pittsburgh as potential, cities to host it over the next couple of years after Green Bay next season. I feel like they have to gear towards those cold weather cities because they're not really going to host the Super Bowl. Like Detroit obviously has a dome. They have hosted a Super Bowl before, but some of these other cities that may not get a Super Bowl can kind of benefit from getting the draft.
Yeah, and the NFL is, at the end of the day, is about creating and gearing things towards the fan. That's why they want to go to, you can say it's about money because it is partially about that, but they want to engage with the fan. So the Combine's always going to be in Indy, even though there's talk of that, but they now have brought the fan experience to Indy. Same thing they have with the draft with the 40 and the vert and all that stuff. But you're right, they do have to cater towards these cold weather cities. Right, Detroit has hosted 2 Super Bowls in the past. I think Minnesota has hosted 1. So that, but you can reward these other cities in ways that they don't have. Like April in Green Bay could still snow, to be honest with you.
Jeez.
Just like it could snow. It was pretty windy and chilly on Wednesday in Detroit, but you're right. Tampa could get one down the road, but Tampa can get Super Bowls. So that's something that these warmer weather clients can get. So it is nice to reward these cold weather cities with something in April. They said it's like $160 million economical impact to Detroit. So that's huge for a city just with hotels and bars and Ubers. So it just is nice to see the NFL broaden its reach across country and reward these cities and these fan bases, which is awesome.
Absolutely. So let's get into the topic for today, breaking down the drafts of all the NFC South teams. We will get your opinion on the Buccaneers, but want to start with, depending on who you ask, the favorite in this year's NFC South, especially after the offseason free agency move they did with Kirk Cousins. Of course, I'm talking about the Atlanta Falcons, but then I shouldn't even say maybe, definitely made the most polarizing draft selection of all of the 2024 NFL draft when they selected Michael Penix Jr., 8th overall. Let's start with Penix, then we'll talk about the rest of their draft. But your immediate reaction / thoughts about Michael Penix Jr. going to a team that just gave a free agent quarterback over $100 million, a big contract. And the crazy thing is when Kirk Cousins' contract is up, they're going to have to decide whether or not they want the 5-year option on Michael Penix Jr. So do you find this as head-scratching as everybody else, or do you kind of see the understanding of why they would do something like it?
Listen, I understand the thought process that if Penix is the guy, it's not a bad pick. I don't buy that. It's still a bad pick. Even if you get out from Kirk after 2 years, you are wasting 2 years of impact on your team. So let's say you took Dallas Turner there, which was what everybody thought it was going to be.
Yep.
You get 2 years of Dallas Turner impact before you need the guy, right? If you say, hey, we got 2 years of Kirk and then we need the guy after Kirk, give me 2 years of someone else, or give me at least 1 year. Like draft a guy next year to sit behind Kirk, knowing that's going to be a 1-year lame duck. I have said for the longest time, I thought Michael Penix was the best quarterback in this draft.
Wow. Better than Caleb Williams.
Yeah, better than Caleb. Like his leadership, his throwing ability, all those things. Like when you're talking about a NFL quarterback, if I'm building a franchise with any of these guys in the draft, for me, for the longest time, it was Michael Penix. I was always worried about his landing spot. So now we're talking, we got to wait 2 years. I don't love it. Yeah. It's a head scratcher. And here's the problem is the draft was chalk up until that point, right? It was quarterback, offensive, wide receiver, offensive lineman. We knew what it was, and we're like, okay, Atlanta's here. They're going to take Dallas Turner or trade back. And then they take Michael Penix, and we're all in the media room going, what the heck? It was worse than the reaction from Jahmyr Gibbs last year. Like Jahmyr Gibbs last year had a couple audible, WTFs. This was speechlessness, and we're all going like, do they trade Cousins? And we all were trying to think, there has never been an instance that we could think of a team signing someone and then trading him within that year.
Yeah.
We've never seen someone sign a free agent signing. So we're like, well, they're stuck. What are they doing? Like, we just all like, what's going on? And then it allowed the Bears to get Rome Odunze, which was just like, oh,
yeah, the Bears are like kind of, I know we're talking about the NFC South, but the Bears, like the knock on any quarterback, and it's not even their fault, but any quarterback that gets drafted first overall, second overall, they're going to a bad team and typically a really bad offense. And we'll talk about that with Bryce Young and the Panthers a little bit later on. But Caleb Williams is coming into a great situation where, like, they got Keenan Allen. They drafted Rome Odunze. Like, they are set up to be a pretty good team. But going back to the Falcons, I I fully agree with the fact that, like, yeah, you can get out of Kirk Cousins' contract after 2 years, but unless Kirk Cousins has a disastrous first 2 seasons, like say he plays average the first year and maybe a little bit better or slightly worse in the second year, because of the money you gave him, you're still going to go, all right, like maybe he rebounds this season, unless it's like absolutely drastic. So I think part of the reason why it was such an awful move, the part I really agree with you with is that they could have just taken a quarterback next season or even the year after, because I understand the model that the Packers have done. They've done it very well, whether it was Rodgers getting drafted with Favre on the team and then Love with Rodgers as the starting quarterback, or even the Chiefs is another example, trading up to get Patrick Mahomes while you had Alex Smith. But they traded Alex Smith after one more year of Smith as the starter, and he was never making the money that, Kirk Cousins just got. So it just seems so silly for the Falcons, not even if they just like Michael Penix, but all that money that they allocated to Kirk Cousins could have been spent in free agency, finding an edge rusher that they needed, or just really adding to the team in any other way. So I think that's the most head-scratching thing of it all.
Well, and here's the thing, like, even if you like Michael Penix, they didn't do a 30 visit with Michael Penix. They did nothing with Michael Penix. Like, didn't seem like they were really in on Michael Penix. And here's the thing, you could have taken Rome Odunze there, which just helps Kirk Cousins and helps you win now. Michael Penix does nothing to help you win now. And that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to win this year. That's what the Kirk Cousins signing said. This year, next year is our window. Imagine how much better the Falcons would have been if Rome Odunze is there instead of Michael Penix. Then you're talking Drake London, Rome Odunze, Darnell Mooney's the 3 with Kyle Pitts and Bijan. Like, then you're talking. Yeah. If that's the case, if Rome Odunze goes to the Falcons at 8, we are talking about them as potentially Super Bowl contenders.
Yeah, for sure. And don't get me wrong, like Bijan Robinson, electric as a running back. Yeah. Pitts, when he's used properly, is a good tight end, but at times he hasn't always been used the right way. And Drake London, I think, is a solid wide receiver, but especially the wide receiver room, I'm not like in love with what the Falcons have compared to the weapons that Kirk Cousins had in Minnesota. Like, he had the best wide receiver in the league, a solid running game, and other good players around him. I think there's an argument to be made that Cousins is leaving an offense that was better that he had in Minnesota than maybe that he came to now in Atlanta.
Oh, for sure. I mean, right, if you look at it and go, Jefferson's better than Drake London, and clearly Addison's probably better than Darnell Mooney, and Hawkinson's probably better or just as good as Pitts. Now, Bijan's better than any running back he's ever had, but you throw Rome Odunze into that mix, man, you're talking about an offense that is just right. Rome Odunze is clearly better than Jordan Addison in my mind. Then you're talking the difference between Justin Jefferson, Drake London is made up by the difference between Rome Odunze and Jordan Addison. And then you're talking about an offense that's firing. You need a defense. Now they fixed their defense with Rook Aurora in the second round. And you got Braylon Trice in the third. So you did, and Dolores and Brandon Dolores in the fourth. So they did address that, but you really probably need, it's kind of nothing. I'm really surprised at what the Falcons did. It was a head scratcher across the board for me, looking at what they did, going, Rook Aurora was a good pick, but probably a little bit of stretch. They probably should have taken that position in the first and gone on.
Yeah, let's take a look at the rest of the Falcons draft. As we were just talking about, Rook Aurora out of Clemson. I actually do like that pick. I think he's a versatile defensive tackle. And again, like, as I'm watching him and reading up on him, I kind of think, like, what would his fit be with the Buccaneers and how he can kind of like line up all over the place. So I think the Falcons did a good job addressing that. And then they finally go with an edge rusher with Braylon Trice in the third round. Brandon Dorlus, again, a guy that I think kind of balled out at the Senior Bowl. He's actually been training in Tampa during this offseason and during this draft process. So funny that he'll be playing Tampa twice a season and being in the city once a season, of course. And then JT Bertrand, Jace McClellan, Casey Washington. So they do go wide receiver, but in round 6, and defensive lineman Zion Logue. Anything else kind of stand out to you with the Falcons draft? Things you like outside of Penix, things you like, you didn't like, or your overall thoughts on it?
I mean, the fact that they went wide receiver in the 6th, was shocking to me because it was a very deep class, and I thought they could have went one earlier in the 6th or possibly in the 5th, but based on who was there. Now, they had back-to-back picks there with McClellan and Washington. They're actually back-to-back in the draft, 186, 187. But could they have taken one in the 5th and gotten a slightly better receiver that can maybe play more? I think they could have. I'm surprised they didn't make any trades for that matter. Like they should have traded out in round 1. Maybe they should have traded back in round 2 because I like Rukor, but like, does he fit there? Like, could they have traded back 5, 6, 7 picks and still got him? Probably. So that was shocking to me that they just didn't do anything other than kind of take best available player on their board. Like it didn't seem like there was a smart GM move of like, let's maneuver. It was kind of like a lazy draft, in my opinion, of like, we'll just take this guy.
Yeah. Interesting. So if you were going to give a grade for the Atlanta Falcons, what are you giving them?
I mean, I have to give them an F. You can't.
An F. All right. Being bold with it. I respect it. You can't miss on your first round. And although I don't think they miss because I love Michael Penix, you can't have your first round pick not make an impact on your team for 2 years. That just can't happen. That's basically a miss. That is just as good as you drafting a bust. And so you drafted a bust is what you've done, because he's not going to have any impact on your team for probably 2 years. Even if he spot starts, let's say he comes in and plays half a season and lights out like a Joe Flacco did. Like, let's say he is that, then it works. But you're basically drafting a bust, so it definitely is an F for me, because that first round pick is going to have no significant impact unless something crazy happens for 2 years. It's bold, but I think it's fair. Your first round pick, you want to see play on the field. And that's something we kind of talked about with the Bucs, where if they were looking at a cornerback, it's like, is that corner going to start right away because of, who they have at corner? And Penix, sure, it's a great insurance policy. So the injuries didn't concern you, the injury history with Michael Penix. I love the way he throws the ball. I'm left-handed myself, so, I tend to root for lefty quarterbacks. There's only so many of them playing the game of football. What specifically did you like about Penix? And I guess the injuries didn't bother you as much.
So watching his film, I liked his throwing. I liked his leadership. I liked his kind of command of that offense. I was concerned about the injuries until the combine. Watching him run and jump showed me that his athleticism didn't come down a little bit, because that was my big fear, that his athleticism takes a dip because of those injuries. Showed me that he's still where he was and that he is rehabbed fully, and those injuries don't have lingering impacts. So that's what I liked about him. I just thought watching him play, watching him kind of lead that offense, and watching the way he handled defeat, watching the way he handled victories, watching the way he pumped up his teammates, watching the way he was on the sidelines, to me showed me like, this guy's a leader. This guy is a quarterback. Caleb Williams is probably the better passer of a football in terms of, if we're talking straight passing. Caleb Williams is just better. But when you're talking about quarterback as a leader of a team, that's what I like about Penix. He can come out there and he can do more with less. And yes, he had Rome Odunze and a couple other guys there in Washington, but I thought the way he handled that situation and just handled the hype and the buzz and the big games and the way he handled 2-minute drills and game-winning drives, that's what I like to see. And the injuries don't bother me because his athleticism showed itself at the combine.
And Michael Penix is a local guy from Dade City, and of course played his last 2 years of high school football in Tampa. So Bucs fans are a little more familiar with him than maybe some other quarterbacks in this year's draft. Speaking of quarterbacks, we got a $2 super chat from Kelly Dwight Fields. Thank you very much, Kelly Dwight Fields. Of course, if you super chat us, doesn't really matter what the topic is, we will make sure we get into it. So Kelly wants to know, why did we not draft a quarterback? Obviously talking about the Buccaneers. So the Bucs were very interested in taking Michael Pratt, the quarterback from Tulane. However, when the Bucs were on the clock in the later rounds, they had Pratt as a target, but he got taken before they were able to draft him. So very likely could have picked Michael Pratt, but he wasn't available. And then, of course, you just signed Baker to the big deal. He's going to be their starter for the foreseeable future. You have Trask as the backup. He's in the last year of his deal. Probably won't be back after the season, but never say never. And they have John Wolford as well. So they are set in the quarterback room. Yeah. I wouldn't be shocked next season if you happen to see something where the Bucs take another quarterback, presumably could be QB2 if Kyle Trask isn't back, and you have a guy set up if it doesn't work out with Baker, but obviously they're very high on Baker Mayfield. Let's talk about the starting quarterback for the Carolina Panthers, Bryce Young. We'll talk about their draft as well, but just your thoughts about his rookie season, how he can improve. And I think a lot of that kind of goes with what we were talking about before, just getting him anybody to throw the football to and play on offense. But your thoughts about Bryce Young?
I mean, Bryce Young had a very disappointing rookie season, and it wasn't necessarily his fault. Like, ownership did not do him any justice by basically forcing the coach's hand to draft him, firing that coach mid-season, not really building around him. He was not set up to succeed. And I'll say this, landing spot matters for everyone, but especially for quarterback.
Yeah.
You look at Josh Rosen, he was a solid quarterback coming into the league and then just got into a crappy situation and got bounced after 3 years because he just couldn't find a coach. Like, the coach that drafted him that's what happens.
Yeah.
These guys get in bad situations and they can never catch on because they've got a bunch of quarterbacks or a bunch of, QBs, QB coaches and offensive coordinators, head coaches that just come and go. Look what's happening with Trevor Lawrence. Generational talent.
Survived Urban Meyer.
Well, and that's what everybody's saying. Oh, he survived Urban Meyer. And I go, yeah, that's just evidence that system matters. Because you go, he's generational talent, but Urban Meyer struck him down. Yeah, because the situation mattered. And now he's going bouncing around with offensive coordinator. So this will be the first time he's had the same offensive coordinator for 2 years.
Yeah.
But he has just been mid. He's been a top 12 to 15 quarterback every season because of the system. So does this help him? So Bryce Young has that problem. They obviously got him weapons. They got Deontay Johnson. They drafted Xavier Leggett, Jonathan Brooks in the second round. Surprised they didn't go offensive line. Now, I know they did pay a bunch in free agency for that. I was surprised they didn't draft one in the third or even second. I thought they could have waited on running back, but whatever. They are at least going, hey, we're going to give you the weapons. We're going to see what you can do, Bryce Young. Like, we paid heavily for you last year. Obviously paid up a ton of picks. Now we're just going to go out and we're just going to continue to invest in you by getting you weapons, and I'm happy with it. They got them 2 really good weapons in Xavier Leggett and Javonte Sanders, and a really good running back in Jonathan Brooks. So they are going all in and saying, Bryce Young, this is your year. It's a make or break year for Bryce Young for me.
By the way, I don't know if I gave my grade for the Falcons, but I'm going to give them a C-. I understand everything about how bad their first round pick was, but I do think they made up for it a little bit with their second, third, and fourth round pick. So C- grade for me for the Atlanta Falcons. But yeah, the Panthers, I feel like this year they just need to acquire ball players, like guys that want to put everything on the line, and they just needed to make their team better in every area. Like, it didn't necessarily matter like what position, obviously with the offense for sure, because it still is an offensive driven league. And they do have a new coach with Dave Canales, who was the offensive coordinator for the Bucs last season. And the claim to fame for Dave Canales was he was in Seattle when they helped revive Geno Smith's career. And then everything that he did with Baker Mayfield last season, he's going to try to do that again with Bryce Young. Not that his career is over, but obviously it was a pretty bad, first season for him, especially with what you saw, what C.J. Stroud did with the Texans making the playoffs, offensive rookie of the year, absolutely balling out, and just seems like an absolute superstar. And because they traded so much draft capital to go get Bryce Young, they did not have a first-round pick until they traded to get back into the first round with the last pick in the first round, going with Xavier Leggett out of South Carolina. So it almost felt like they were doing this draft with one hand tied behind their back, just given all the issues that they had. But they end up going with Leggett in round 1, address running back in round 2 with Jonathan Brooks. Trevin Wallace was one of the best inside linebackers in this year's draft class, but it was not a good overall draft class for inside linebackers. So it's one of those like, all right, you got your guy, but also, do you really want to spend a third round pick, which, third rounders start on teams, not every single team, but third rounders, especially on a team that was supposed to have the first overall pick. I don't know if I would have went with an inside linebacker with that choice. I do like it in round 1. Their other picks were Jatavian Sanders at tight end, Chow Smith-Wade at corner, defensive tackle Jaden Crumney, and they doubled up at inside linebacker, going with Michael Barrett in round 7. So what are your thoughts on what the Panthers did in this year's draft?
Yeah, I said all along that I thought the Panthers were going to trade up to get a wide receiver. In all my mock drafts, especially my final one, I had them actually trading up. Actually, trading with Green Bay usually was where I was targeting them. I think I had them trading with Tampa Bay once, but I knew they were going to trade up because there was that kind of gap in receiver there. So it was no surprise to me when they traded up. I was happy they traded with my Bills when we moved back, when we picked his picks. But considering they traded up in the first round and still picked one guy in every round of the draft, shows me they still had some late picks and they were able to be smart about it. Do I love Xavier Leggett? No, I think he's okay. I don't think he's great. I think there's other receivers around there that probably would have been better for them, but gives them a great options. Now they've got Deontay Johnson, Adam Thielen's Leggett, and then Jonathan Mingo. If Mingo can step up, and Jatavian Sanders, like, you've got really good receiving weapons now for Bryce Young. So I do think you're right. They were drafting with one hand tied behind their back because they traded so much to get Bryce Young. They made some smart moves, obviously, to move up to get Leggett, not trade a ton, move up basically one pick to kind of get their guy, which, I think they paid like a 5th rounder for it. So not a horrible, deal to do that. I really like what they did. I give it a C+ grade. They're just all in on Bryce Young, and if Bryce Young isn't good this year, then what is my question? Because now you have invested 2 drafts really into Bryce Young. You drafted basically last year's draft to get him, and this year you're giving him weapons. If he doesn't take a significant step forward, what does David Tepper do? Because he's a meddler. Like, he could fire Canales mid-season again. Like,
I know,
and has to win.
And I strongly feel that would be a terrible decision. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not expecting the Panthers to make any noise this year, maybe not even next season, but sometimes you got to let things play out a little bit. And if you have, a quick hook and you're going to get rid of coach after coach after coach, it's difficult for anybody to develop as a player or for an organization to have stability. I mean, I think Baker Mayfield is another guy who's a great example, had a ton of different coaches in Cleveland, had a different offensive coordinator every single year of his NFL career. Even this season goes from Dave Canales, now with Liam Cohen. So whether or not Bryce Young works out, I'm telling you, Dave Canales, Bucs fans know he's got this like upbeat, positive personality. Great. It's infectious in the room when he's up there smiling, just showing that he believes in his guys. I think that would be a terrible decision if I doubt they would do it after one season, but to pull a quick hook on Dave Canales would be a bad idea. I think Mingo, obviously not a draft pick this year, but if he can take a step forward, I think that'll be really important for the Panthers moving forward. You mentioned great options. There is no shortage of great options when it comes to Celsius energy drinks, the official energy drink of the Pewter Report podcast. We always keep the vibes high on this show, and there's a lot of great vibe flavors, the Galaxy, Astro, and Cosmic. The Arctic Vibe is my personal favorite as well. Great original flavors like the strawberry lemonade and the watermelon. So tons of great flavors over at Celsius. If you haven't had one before, maybe you're in a different area on vacation, maybe you're traveling for the draft and you need to know where to find a Celsius, go to the Celsius store locator on their website, punch in your address, and it'll tell you the closest geographical location where you can pick one up. Could be a Walmart, a health and fitness store. If you're lucky enough, it might just be your bodega. And once you keep going to your bodega and you love Celsius and you want to get more, you can buy it in bulk. Go over to Amazon Prime, click on the subscribe and save. I'd recommend getting the variety pack, because variety is the spice of life, and you heard me rattle off all these great flavors of Celsius. So you can buy it on Amazon Prime, have it sent to your place of residence whenever you want. You're in charge. You're the captain. Use a special link on pewterreport.com as well, and that further helps Pewter Report if you buy Celsius like you normally would on Amazon with the Pewter Report link. And just make sure you're drinking Celsius energy drinks, the official energy drink of pewterreport.com and the Pewter Report podcast. All right, Dustin, before we get you out of here, let's talk a little bit about the Bucs, your overall thoughts on their draft. And you are a quarterback guy. Thoughts on Baker Mayfield, the season he had, and your expectations for him going into this year.
Yeah, I mean, I was honestly surprised with the season Baker had.
You were a little down. You were a little down.
I was on the trash. I was on the trash bandwagon last offseason. They've done well, and they seem to be running it back, right? You re-sign Baker. You re-sign Mike Evans. You kind of go, okay, let's get the band back together for one more, tour and see what we can do. The division is still kind of wide open, right? The Saints are the Saints. Panthers are the Panthers. Are the Falcons that much better? Right? Tampa Bay goes, hey, we won it last year. We did well with this team. Let's just run it back. So they are in the driver's seat of this division, and I think running back was smart. They added some good pieces. I love the Graham Barton piece. He was one of my favorite offensive linemen in the draft. I think he can slot into multiple positions there. I really like Bucky Irving in the 4th. I think he's going to be a great compliment to Rachaad White. Actually surprised they didn't draft someone a little sooner, but still they got a great guy there. Running backs were just falling in the draft. Chase McMillan can be a decent guy there in the 3rd. So I think they are saying, hey, we had a good team. We just need to add a few pieces. Let's spend our 1st-round pick on Graham Barton. Let's protect Baker Mayfield to really, get the ball out to Evans and Godwin and K-Dot. And let's build our team the right way. Let's build it from the trenches. I'm telling you, I talked to Todd Bowles at the Combine, and just his mentality on how he builds a team. And it's just he's not all about the sexy picks. He's not about the flash. He's just I'm going to build the right team the right way, and I'm going to build my guys, and I don't care if people like it or not. This is what I know is the best thing for football. And it's shown. The Buccaneers have done really well. And so I think Baker could have another good year.
Yeah, it does not matter to Todd Bowles and Jason Light how they win. They don't care if they air it out. They don't care if they run it, whether it's a high-scoring game or they win, 7-0. It does not matter. And I think it shows how they've been able to win the division over the past couple of seasons. It hasn't always been pretty, but they tend to get the job done. And yeah, Jason Light loves drafting in the trenches. I mean, the last 3 years, he's drafted an offensive lineman by the 2nd round. So he loves rebuilding the trenches, and Graham Barton is the next one that can kind of put a stamp on the draft prowess that Jason Light has as a GM in the league. Dustin, it's been great having you on. Thank you so much for joining. Let everybody know where they can find your work, where they can follow you on social media and all that jazz.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter or X at the DUnit13. That's the best place to find my stuff. I'm the content director for Dynasty Pros Football, so dynastyprosfootball.com. We got rookie impact articles coming out daily. Basically, we got guys writing about impacts of a Xavier Leggett, the impact of a Bucky Irving, the impact of Michael Penix, all these guys, and we're just going through and we're just running through and getting 2 or 3 out a day. You can catch me on some podcasts coming up. The best place to find my stuff is on Twitter. Everything I do runs through there. I do some work with Front Office Pros, some stuff with QB List. Going to start writing for Roto Baller soon. Got some other things in the works. Great. So that's the best place to find me. It's all on Twitter. I just released my wide receiver rankings 2 days ago, my running back rankings, my rookie running back rankings yesterday. So you'll see tight ends, which my tight end rankings are going to shock some people. I will tell you that much. So be on the lookout for those. They'll probably coming out tomorrow.
Nice little teaser there. Dustin, again, thank you so much for joining the show. Make sure you check out all of his work and follow him on social media. All right, we're about to bring on Garrett Ballard, but first, let's hear a message from our friends over at Immuni Financial.
At Immuni Financial, we help you live in the now.
Dude, congratulations. We're so happy for you.
Thank you. And even though the now may feel very different, you still need to plan for the future.
How's retirement treating you?
Oh, just fantastic.
I know I say it all the time, but you really got to come up to Colorado.
Let's do it.
All right.
Yeah.
We can help you develop that plan to keep you on track so you can still prepare for tomorrow, today. Immuni Financial. Plan ahead, stay ahead.
That's right. Immuni Financial has proudly been serving clients across the country since 1980. They can help you out with a number of things like advisory services, legacy and retirement planning, annuities, sales and trading. If you want to set up a college account for your kid, if they want to go to, if they plan on going to college one day, they can help you up setting up that financial account. And the cool thing is, Immuni Financial, they're not just in Tampa, they're not just in Colorado, they're all across the United States. So you can be in Texas or Detroit or wherever. There is an Immuni Financial for you. So give them a call, get a free consultation. It's absolutely free, so you got nothing to lose with it. And help out our friends over at Immuni Financial. All right, joining the show now, very happy to have him on. He is a Bucs beat reporter and the co-host of the Creamsicle Chronicle podcast. Welcome to the show, Garrett Ballard. Garrett, how you doing? And thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I'm doing great. It's a great day to be on a podcast, that's for sure. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, anytime. Really liking the background that you got there. Good old Raymond James Stadium. Now, we already talked about the Falcons and the Panthers, but I keep forgetting to give my grade for them. I'm going to give the Panthers a C. Thought it was average, okay. We're going to talk a little bit more about the Saints and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but I would be remiss if I didn't give you the opportunity to share your thoughts about the Michael Penix Jr. pick with the Falcons.
Yeah, I think it's a gross mismanagement of draft capital, if I'm being honest, to put it kindly. I think you obviously the NFC South isn't the strongest conference in the NFL. Obviously, the Bucs won it last year, but that's not like it wasn't close, right? The Falcons think with the Kirk Cousins pickup that they can compete for this division title. And you kind of just throw a wrench in that by drafting a quarterback 8th overall when you could have instant impact players to help you to that goal.
Yeah, it was just one of the most shocking picks. And every year there's, some questionable ones, but because it's quarterback and because of like the move that the Falcons did with giving all that money to Kirk Cousins, it really feels like this is going to be a draft pick that gets remembered for quite a while, whether it's some of the things I mentioned or because it was a top 10 pick with the Falcons picking him 8th overall, or the fact that, he went ahead of guys like J.J. McCarthy, who some really thought that J.J. might be the third quarterback, off the board, or fourth one after Drake May, I should say. But yeah, a really memorable pick for bad reasons for the Falcons, for good reasons for the Buccaneers. We'll talk about the Saints in a moment, but we got a super chat. And like I said, if you super chat us, we're happy to talk about any topic, football related, really anything. If you super chat us, we're happy to talk about it. So thank you to Tree, parentheses Ken, for this $10 super chat. As Tree says, do you see Bucky Irving as a threat to take RB1? White produced 3.7 yards per carry in 2022 and 3.6 yards per carry in 2023, 40th best in the NFL. What does Bucky have to do to take RB1? Very good question, Tree. I think when you look at the Bucs running game overall, you can't just look at Rachaad White. I think two of the biggest things really is the struggle of the interior offensive line, which we saw the Bucs address with Graham Barton and Elijah Klein later on, but specifically Graham Barton. I would also say the way that plays were set up, the schematics of it all. Dave Canales, first of all, Byron Leftwich, there was no rhyme or reason to anything that he did, but that was a long time ago. Dave Canales, for as good as he was as an offensive coordinator, let's remember, this was his first time being an every game play caller in the NFL. And he even admitted he's stubborn with the run. I think that's why you kind of saw the Panthers draft the running back in round 2. I think there were times when, maybe they should have thrown it when they decided to run it, or even times where the box was a little more open and they should have ran it, but they threw it instead. So I think the pacing and scheme throughout the game kind of hurt Dave Canales at times. Now, specifically for Rachaad White, yeah, he does need to improve as a runner, but how effective he was in the passing game as a receiver. I mean, I think there's a good argument that he was, after Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, their best weapon in the passing game. So it's kind of difficult to take him off the field because of that. I think Rachaad White is pretty good after contact. I think he's done a much, much better job of seeing the hole or seeing the play develop and just hitting it, in terms of just kind of waiting around and waiting for things to develop, because that could work at college, but it doesn't always work in the NFL. And I think this can be a true breakout year for Rachaad White. Let's remember, he was 10 yards away from an 1,000-yard rushing season. And there were times in the game late where he could have got an extra 5 yards, but he decided to go down, stay in bounds, and run the clock out. So, if he did it for him, he probably would have got 1,000 yards, but Rashaad's a team player. So what are your thoughts about that, Garrett?
Yeah, I'm pretty lockstep with you. I think it was more of just a overall scheme and protection kind of issue rather than a Rachaad White issue. I think White is a good, patient running back. He knows when he needs to, like you said, he's still working on that ability to just run downhill when he needs to. But you always see him trying to fight for more, which sometimes can come back to bite him. But the effort's there, the skill is clearly there. You can see him make people miss in the pass game. And I just think he needs a bit more discipline and understanding of situations. And then surely with the new additions to the offensive line, that'll help quite a bit.
And as far as it goes with Bucky Irving, a great thing about him is that he's really, really tough to knock off his feet. And if you're staying up, that means you're not getting tackled, and he can break tackles. And he obviously worked in a great offense. He is of a much smaller stature, which is some concern for some people, and he will need to pass block. And you might be saying, well, he's a running back. Like, what does he need to pass block for? In the Bucs offense specifically, really doesn't matter who the offensive coordinator is. But if you're not able to pass block, especially with Baker Mayfield back there, you're just not going to see the field. And that's another thing that Rachaad White really excels at. Now, at the same time, Rachaad White is going into year 3. He only has 2 more years on his contract. We know how it goes with running backs in today's NFL. Unless you're the cream of the crop like Christian McCaffrey or, Saquon Barkley, it's really, really difficult for running backs to get that second contract that they want and that they deserve. So I think this is kind of planting the seeds a little bit of they have another option they can turn to in 2 seasons from now. If Rachaad White isn't back with the Bucs, you still have Bucky Irving on the roster, who obviously will have a couple seasons under his belt, and maybe at that time, depending on how he progresses, can take the reins for the Bucs offense. All right, let's go to the Panthers draft. Not the Panthers, excuse me, the Saints. So they kind of went, I don't want to say chalk, but they kind of went the route that they should have gone with Talisi Fuaga out of Oregon State in the first round, Kool-Aid McKinstry in round 2. The crazy thing, though, is that they did not have another draft pick until the 5th round. They actually had a couple of 5th-round picks. They ended up using one of them to trade up. So they went Spencer Rattler, the quarterback that we've talked about a lot on the show, in the 5th round. Bub Means, a wide receiver. Jalen Ford, a linebacker. Christian Boyd, the defensive tackle. And then Josiah Ezerin in round 7. Garrett, what was your overall thoughts on this draft, especially with Fuaga and McKinstry, but your opinion on it?
Yeah, so I think before I get into this, I'm only going to, when I give my final grade, I got to give at what they had, right? I'm not going to fault them for not having a 3rd-round pick or a 4th-round pick, but
sure.
I think overall, I think they did a pretty good job. I think this is, in my opinion, the 2nd best draft in the NFC South this year. I love Fuaga as a prospect. I think that is a mean blocker right there. He's definitely going to cause some issues for anyone he goes against, I think. He's strong. He's nimble. He tested like a freak. So I think that is a great pickup for an offensive line that really needed a burst, an injection of youth and energy. And then Kool-Aid McKinstry in the 2nd round. I think this is right around the range where I had him. I didn't love the 1st round hype. I think he's, a really good corner, but I think he's very limited to the outside. And that's okay. Obviously he's coming off an injury and there were some athleticism questions. I think those probably go in hand. But at round 2 where they got him, you really can't find a better pick in that situation. He was falling, and the Saints, again, they need a corner. They really got Marshawn Lattimore, and he's been iffy the last couple years.
Yeah.
And then going all the way down to round 5, Spencer Rattler. This was a guy a couple of years ago that a lot of people had penciled in as the 1st overall pick.
Yeah, right.
Which is pretty crazy. Didn't really turn out that way, which is all right. But I think in round 5, for the value you're getting there, can't really beat it. I think he could, honestly, Derek Carr is probably on a short leash this year, and he might be able to step in and take some starter snaps for them. And then Bub Means, athletic wide receiver, got some traits that you can hopefully develop. And then Christian Boyd, Josiah Ezerin. Boyd was, I think, a pre-draft process gem. Like, people loved him at all-star games and raved about what he was able to do there. Kind of put his name into those circles after graduating or coming out of a small school program like UNI. And then Ezerin, the ceiling's kind of capped with him. I like him as a 7th-round pick because he's a huge guy, really mean run blocker, but don't really see a road to a true role for him in this Saints offense.
Yeah, the Fuaga pick, I was a big fan of for the Saints. I really like just the overall tackle class this year. And I'm talking about true tackles, not like, Graham Barton plays tackle and they're going to kick him inside. So the Saints, without question, really needed to address their offensive line this year. And Derek Carr had such a roller coaster season. Like, at times I don't even know what to make of it. But a big part of that roller coaster was the injuries that he sustained and somehow was able to play through. And I think that was really at times to the detriment of the Saints. I think even that first matchup when the Bucs played the Saints in New Orleans, I mean, Derek Carr was hanging on by a thread, and you kind of just saw the Bucs run away with it. And I think a big part of that was because of the injury. So obviously you try to clean that up with, the offensive line, especially because Trevor Penning has struggled. He was one of their offensive line draft picks a couple seasons ago. Ramczyk, I think, is like pretty injured and may not play football again. So that's obviously a guy who has been a staple for the Saints offense for years on the offensive line. And if he can't play, I mean, that's obviously a huge blow for them. Kool-Aid McKinstry, I agree with everything you said, like didn't totally test well, a little bit of an injury history. I guess I can't agree with that. It's just a fact. Like he got injured. The size thing, I think, played a little bit of a factor into him dropping. I did kind of feel bad for him. Like, oh man, you're just going to get dominated by Mike Evans every Sunday or Monday or Thursday when they play. But secondary certainly was a need for them. It does hurt that they did not have a third or a fourth round pick because I'm not in love with the Saints wide receiver room either. I know they got a couple of guys, like really fast dudes, but I don't know if they have a guy that can totally, really take over a game. And I know they took a wide receiver later on, but as far as like a stud number one, I do like Olave. I should take that back. I really do like Olave, but I don't think he can be the entire offense the way that like Mike Evans can kind of take over for the Bucs at times. I'm not knocking Chris Godwin at all by any means, but I feel like wide receiver is probably somewhere where they would have liked to address a little bit earlier if they had the draft picks.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I mean, it's never good when, you're missing two of your big impact picks there. The first 4 rounds, particularly the first 3, but that fourth, you can get some guys that might have fallen. Those are going to be the ones that you're looking to start within the first 2 years, ideally. And if you're a team like the Saints with some holes that need to be plugged, especially at, like you said, wide receiver, O-line, not having those picks, it hurts. Definitely. Bub Means is a nice player, but like you said, he's not the takeover type. He's not going to carry you week in and week out in the receiving stats. Chris Olave is a good player, but like you said, I don't know if he can do it every single week. I think he's a good wide receiver 1 for now, but an upgradable wide receiver 1. He'd be an elite wide receiver 2. So they still need to hunt for that guy. And, unfortunately, for them, it didn't happen this offseason.
So what is the official grade that you're giving the Saints with the caveat of they didn't have those middle round picks?
Yeah. I think I'd give them just a B-. I love the first 2 picks. And then from there on out, it's fine. I mean, the Rattler pick could be good if he comes in and starts, but again, it could suck. He could be bad. Rookie quarterbacks outside the first round are super sketchy. You really don't see many of them hit. So it's not something that you should be like, oh yeah, Rattler, that's going to be a guy that can take over for Derek Carr and actually reliably do a good job. Because truthfully, we have no idea, and the trends point to he's not. So it's a B-. It's fine. There's nothing crazy about it.
One thing I get really crazy about is when I'm gambling on sports. And if you want to get into sports betting, the best place to go and do it is over at MyBookie.ag. Especially this weekend, there's a big UFC fight coming up, a pay-per-view, UFC 301, Pantoja versus Urkeg. Bet on any fight, anytime, from anywhere with MyBookie. With UFC 301 on tap this weekend, you can confidently bet on yourself at MyBookie. Boosted bets and exclusive money bag props give you everything you need to cash in on your fight knowledge. I'm a big UFC fan. I love watching the pay-per-views, and some of my favorite bets are, not just picking a guy to win or to go over or under a certain amount of rounds. I like doing the prop bets of this guy's going to win by TKO or this fighter is going to win by submission in the second round. Obviously gives you a lot better odds. And if you win, it makes it just that much better because it's a little bit more money than usual. And pay-per-view events in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil have always delivered memorable moments. So this weekend's card shouldn't be any different. The best part is when you bet, You can stream and bet live from the MyBookie Sportsbook so you can turn those big moments into big wins. You know you're going to watch the fights this weekend anyway, so choose the book that makes it simple to bet and easy to bet to get paid. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere, only with MyBookie. Use the promo code PEWTER, that's PEWTER. You get a first deposit bonus when you sign up with MyBookie. That's free money in your account. So even if you learn from Plant City Math, you know that is a heck of a deal. Shout out to MyBookie.ag. The UFC fights coming up are great. A lot of awesome sports going on at the moment. The playoffs in the NBA and the NHL. My New York Knicks play tonight at 9 p.m. I do not feel great about that. If you're a baseball fan, my New York Mets are playing against the Rays this weekend. I'll be at every single game there, so you can bet on that too. And yeah, mybookie.ag. Use the promo code PEWTER. That's PEWTER. All right, Garrett, let's get into the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, saving the best for last. Again, I'm giving a B to the New Orleans Saints. I think they did okay with what they had in front of them. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers was, in my opinion, the best draft out of the NFC South. Graham Barton in the first round, Chris Braswell from Alabama, the outside linebacker in round 2. My favorite pick by the Bucs, Tyke Smith out of Georgia. He's a safety. We'll see where he ends up playing. Washington wide receiver Jalen McMillan. Oregon running back Bucky Irving, who we talked about a little bit before. UTEP guard Elijah Klein in round 6. And, of course, the Bucs cannot stop drafting Washington players throughout their roster. So, last but not least, Washington tight end Devin Culp in the 7th round. Garrett, give me your thoughts on this draft class, what you like about it, what maybe you have questions about, and your thoughts on the Bucs 2024 draft class.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think this is the best draft class in the NFC South. No bias, but I think what they were able to do and attack the positions of need that they had was done masterfully. Yet another Jason Light and co master class in the draft. Starting it off, round 1, Graham Barton. This is the guy they clearly wanted all along. They were, they were not shy about sharing the fact that they were sweating it out, waiting for him to get there. And then the video was released yesterday of Jason Light going, man, we love it when a plan comes together, clapping when they were able to turn in the picks. So Graham Barton played tackle in college, but is a mean run blocker, mean pass blocker, freak athlete. I think at center, he's the on the RAS scale, which measures your athleticism relative to your position. He's the number 1 center all
time.
Had
a perfect score. Yeah, had a perfect score of 10, I believe.
Yeah, that's stuff you don't ever see. So the fact that they were able to just sit at 26 and get the guy they wanted is something to behold. That's for sure. Round 2, Chris Braswell. This was a guy that I kind of had my eye on early in the process for the Bucs. I think he fits that kind of mold that they want. Good athlete, but not someone that, isn't underdeveloped. I know a lot of people, when they see an edge rusher, they say, oh, is it just another JTS pick? This is a completely different player. Braswell plays with power more so than speed and finesse. He's a really, really strong run defender, hard-nosed, takes on blocks and can shed them really easily. Got a mean long arm, converts speed to power really well. It's not like a home run in terms of going to get you double-digit sacks every year, but he's going to get the job done every time. And that's really what you want in a second-round edge rusher. 3rd round, you got 2 picks, the first being that Tyke Smith pick. I'd be stunned if he doesn't play nickel for this team. We know that they've been really wanting to upgrade over Chris Isian, albeit he did a good job last year, but still a position that's upgradable. And Tyke Smith played, I think, over 1,000 snaps in college at nickel, which is insane. Like that's so many snaps, but obviously he transferred from
West Virginia,
thank you, to Georgia, and stepped into that just powerhouse of a defense. And then Jalen McMillan, the next pick, is my favorite pick of the draft. I think this is the perfect wide receiver for what the Buccaneers needed in that room. I think this is a reliable receiver, gets everything done on time, smart guy, gritty over the middle of the field, despite the size concerns, my apologies. And I think he's going to really mold himself after Chris Godwin. And I know that can be a high, lofty comparison, but I think that's the kind of role he's going to adopt, and I think he's going to be really good at it. Bucky Irving, I like the player. I thought they were going to go for a bit of a bigger bodied back. Just to, we talked about it. Rashad White sometimes struggles to just shove his head down and go
get that yard.
Yeah. So I was really looking at someone like Ray Davis or Audric Estime there in the fourth, but I like the player, so I can't really complain too much about it. All the way down, Klein was the next pick, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Throw it up on the screen.
Yeah, someone that I've kind of followed for a while, Brandon Thorne. He's a good.
Yeah, he's been on the show before. He's the guru when it comes to offensive linemen.
He is awesome. He's a big fan of Klein. From what I was reading, is that limited in what you're going to get, but is a mean run blocker. Like you can bring him in on those sub packages, those jumbo packages, and really just bully some people on the defensive front. So that's awesome. And then Devin Culp, this was a guy that I kind of saw right around the combine when they were talking to him, and he was saying he was meeting with the Bucs, and then he ran a 4.47. I'm like, oh yeah, he'll be a Buck. Here we are. Went to Washington, ran well, late round guy. They love to target those guys, so it makes a lot of sense. I'm a big fan of this draft.
Yeah, Tyke Smith, I mentioned before, I'm a huge fan of his, just because he can do a little bit of everything. And I would love to see a situation, maybe if it's at nickel, but some type of scheme by Todd Bowles where you have Antoine Winfield Jr., Jordan Whitehead, and Tyke Smith all on the field at the same time. Just the versatility of that whole unit, because I do think Jordan Whitehead got better in coverage when he went to the Jets, and partially because the Bucs just didn't really ask him to play back that much. He was always up in the box. So Tyke Smith, he can blitz, he's physical, can tackle, and can take the ball away as well. And I like the depth that the Bucs have with the signing of Tavier Thomas. Like, he can play nickel as well. Christian Izzy, obviously played that last year, but who knows? Maybe Izzy, and there's a lot of talks about him playing at free safety, obviously behind Antoine Winfield Jr. Larry Foote, the co-defensive coordinator, when he was talking about Tyke Smith, he even mentioned he's more of like a corner-ish type of player. And when you hear that, you kind of think like, all right, well, then he's going to play in the slot. Speaking of the slot, McMillan, I said it on yesterday's show, but I'll say it again. I think he is the pick in this year's draft for the Bucs that can elevate the Bucs from a good to great draft, or kind of keep it at good to somewhat average based on, his first and second season with the Bucs. He pretty much played all in the slot during his time at Washington, which was interesting with his fit with the Bucs, because there was talks about Godwin kind of moving back to the slot, where he really excelled kind of early on when Bruce Arians came through in 2019 and obviously in 2020. But I just think it gives the Bucs a lot of options, and they don't just have to hope that Trey Palmer, who, let's face it, was a 6th round pick, to develop to be an every game stud for the Bucs, especially this year when they're going to play a lot more 11 personnel with 3 wide receivers and 1 tight end. So McMillan, I think, is exciting. Braswell in the 2nd round has all the measurements and everything that you want there. Waited his time at Bama too. I think there's something kind of commendable about that in today's NFL or today's college football, where everyone transfers at the drop of a hat as soon as they don't get their way. And if anything, it just kind of pushes that whole outside linebacker room. Klein, 6th round pick, but he's physical and he's tough. He is a Jason Light draft pick. He's a Jason Light offensive lineman. And you know what?
School,
yeah, exactly. I'm not comparing him to these guys at all in different positions, but I mean, Ryan Jensen was a 6th round pick. Jason Kelsey was a 6th round pick. I'm not saying he's going to be the next of them, but you can find value, particularly at the offensive line at that position. And then Culp, yeah, everything you said, speed. John Spytek, the assistant GM, said that he's the fastest tight end in the room already. I do worry about him holding up as a blocker, but again, when you're a 7th round pick, it's, you take the good with the bad in those situations.
He was, 238 pounds?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
And, if he can make the catches in traffic, that's something that Cade Otton can catch the ball fine. But the difficult catches in tight windows with the defender on him didn't always come up big in those specific situations. Yes, I know we had the game-winning touchdown against the Saints 2 seasons ago, made the big touchdown late in the game against the Falcons last year. But I'm talking about in traffic, in tight windows, hasn't always been the forte of Cade Otton. So if you bring in a real receiving tight end, and I know he didn't really have the stats at Washington, but I think he has the skill set, could end up being a great 7th-round pick for the Buccaneers. So they're going to have certainly new toys to play with, nonetheless, on the offensive side, while kind of rounding out some great spots on the defense. And speaking of great spots, we know that Tampa is a great area to live. Absolutely love living in Tampa. If you're thinking about moving to Tampa, or if you have to leave and you got to buy or sell a home, there's no better person to work with than Eric Gross and the Eric Gross Group. Eric's been on the show before. He's an avid Bucs fan. Looking forward to having him on the show again sometime soon. It takes a full team effort to win a football game, and it takes a full team effort to win in real estate. The Eric Gross Group has done hundreds of transactions in this crazy real estate market and has experience in all types of situations. With their strong team of vendors and a network of over 85,000 agents, the Eric Gross Group will turn your dream of buying or selling a home into a reality. Their clients are not just transactions, they are lifelong friendships. So don't let the stress of buying or selling a home keep you out of the game. Let the Eric Gross Group take the pressure off. Find them on Facebook and Instagram over at Eric Gross Group, and check out their website, housesinfla.com, or give them a call at 513-907-4271. That's housesinfla.com. Their number is 513-907-4271. No matter where you are on your home ownership journey, you'll feel welcome with the Eric Gross Group, the official realty group of pewterreport.com. All right, before we wrap up the show, Garrett, just give me your thoughts on the Bucs heading into the 2024 season. Can they stay up at the top of the NFC South like they have the past couple of seasons? What are your expectations for them going into this year?
Yeah, I think after the last season, and I'll admit I was one that was skeptical, you were like, okay, how can they build on that, right? Always you want to elevate and see how you can get better. Bringing back everyone that matters is a big part of that. And then fixing the parts of your team that needed fixing is huge. You saw many, many teams not really focus on that in free agency. The Bucs were not one of them. Jason Light, John Spytek, Mike Greenberg, everyone in the front office knew what they needed to do, and they executed through free agency and the draft. I talked about it earlier. This was a division that was seemingly up for grabs, and the Falcons kind of squandered that opportunity. The Bucs don't want to let it go, clearly. They want to keep winning this division and keep making the playoffs with, like, by far. They don't want anyone to be close. I expect that. I expect them to win the division by a wide margin pretty handily and keep winning it for a couple of years. I think they are doing an excellent job of maintaining their success and perpetuating it for the future years.
So you're not as threatened by Atlanta and what they did with Kirk Cousins?
I think that's a good move for them, but I'm not.
All right, fair enough. Yeah, I think the reason why people are sleeping on the Bucs a little bit, which is crazy at this point because everyone doubted them last year and they proved so many people wrong. It's like they look at the Bucs just re-signing their own guys and being like, all right, well, what else did they do? And then, they obviously had a good draft. By the way, official draft grade, A plus?
A, yeah.
A. Yeah, I'm giving it an A. Yeah, I'm giving it an A as well. But then, they go and sign Jordan Whitehead, and they had a pretty good draft. Like, there's nothing in the rule book that says that it's wrong to just re-sign your own guys. And if you want to look at, all right, well, they went 9-8. That is a one-game improvement from the year before, though. So if they can get to 10 wins this season, or maybe even 11, I mean, they're in a nice spot. They're in a sweet spot right now of just being a team that can continue to grow moving forward, especially with the young offensive line. Baker here for a couple of seasons. Mike still playing at a high level. I know he's getting older. And I think the defense will even be better this season, especially just because, they figured out the safety room a lot more with bringing Whitehead back and obviously Tyke Smith. So I think there's a lot of great things to like with the Buccaneers and their roster coming up this season. We're going to be talking a lot about the Bucs roster next week, especially on Monday's show. So if you're not already doing so, please like and subscribe to everything Pewter Report. You can follow us on X, Facebook, and Instagram. over at Pewter Report and our YouTube channel, whether it's the podcast, the live stream that we do for in-games and for the draft, and we're going to be coming up with more stuff as well, or just all the videos we put up on there as well. Please subscribe to Pewter Report TV. We're trying to get those followers up. So if you guys could do that, we'd really appreciate it. And please like and leave a comment on this channel as well after this episode is done. Garrett, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. Please let everybody know where they can follow you on social media and check out all your work.
Yeah. If you want direct access to whatever I do, just follow me on Twitter. It is at NFL Ballard, NFL Ballard. I record a podcast, Creamsicle Chronicles podcast, every Friday night at 9:30 p.m. Eastern with JT Olson, another awesome Bucs follow. He does a lot of good work. He's a really smart guy and definitely deserves more followers than he has, that's for sure. But yeah, just follow me on Twitter. I cover the Bucs in season for Sports Talk Florida, but I put out all my stuff there, so that's just the easiest way to find me. So thanks for having me on, man. That was a great time.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, make sure you follow Garrett. A lot of great stuff over there on the social media and the podcast and everything that he does. So that's going to do it for us on today's show. For Dustin Ludke, who was on earlier, for Garrett Ballard, I'm Matt Matera saying thanks everybody for watching. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you on Monday at 4 p.m. for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out.